It is the coldest night of the year. You can feel the draft sliding across the floor. You walk over and you turn up the thermostat, and somewhere down in the basement the furnace roars to life, burning fuel, burning money, blasting hot air up through the house. And within the hour, most of that heat has slipped out through the walls, up through the ceiling, out every crack and window, gone. So the furnace roars again, and again, all night long. And at the end of the month, you open the heating bill, and the number takes your breath away. The average American household spends well over $1,000 a year just to stay warm. In a hard winter, in a cold region, far more than that. And the cruelest part is how much of it is wasted, blasted out into the night, heating air that escapes almost as fast as you can warm it. You are not heating your home. You are heating the outdoors, and paying for every degree of it. Now, I am going to tell you something that sounds, at first, like pure fantasy. There is an old trick kept alive by the Amish that goes back to the 1800s that can take the bitter chill off a room with nothing but a single candle and a simple clay pot, one small flame. No furnace, no fuel line, no roaring in the basement. And the principle behind it is so sound, so real, that the heating companies would much rather you never understood it, because once you do, you start to see just how much of that $1,000 is pure waste. A single candle, a clay pot, and the forgotten science of how heat actually works. By the end of this video, you will understand it completely, and you will never look at your roaring furnace the same way again. Stay with me, because I am going to show you exactly how this works, the real science underneath it, how to make one safely yourself, and near the end, the deeper secret that the old folks understood about heat that we have completely forgotten, the part that matters far more than the candle. Do not click away. The most important part comes last. My name is Levi Miller, and I did not read this in a book. I sat beside one in a cold workshop in Lancaster County with my own hands held out to the warmth. Now first, understand this. This is not new. There is no patent on it. No company invented it. People warmed themselves this way, with small flames and clay and stone, for thousands of years before there was a furnace or a fuel bill. The principle is older than the chimney. The Amish simply never forgot it. While the rest of the country surrendered to the furnace and the monthly bill, they kept the old knowledge of heat alive, winter by winter, for 200 years. And that, of course, is exactly why you were never taught it, because there is no money in a single candle. Let me take you to where I learned it. It was a brutally cold afternoon in late December when I drove out to a farm near Gap, Pennsylvania. The wind was cutting straight across the open fields, and the sky was that hard, pale gray that promises snow. I had come to meet a man named Samuel Byler, 84 years old, a clockmaker and a tinkerer, known across his community as a man who understood, in his hands, how the old things worked. He brought me into his workshop, and it was cold, the breath showing in the air. And then he lit a single candle, and he set over it a simple arrangement of clay pots, nested and stacked, with a little space for the air to move. And we sat, and we talked, and slowly, steadily, I felt it. The clay grew warm, then hot, and the warmth began to radiate out from it, a real, steady, gentle heat, filling the space around us, taking the bite out of the cold air. From one candle, I held my hands out to it, astonished, and Samuel watched my face, and he smiled, and he said the thing I want you to remember, the thing he repeated 3 times that afternoon. He said, "The English heat the air, and the air runs away. We heat the thing, and the thing stays warm. Warm the iron, not the wind. Warm the thing, not the air. Hold on to that. Because by the end of this you will understand it is the entire secret, and it is the reason your expensive furnace wastes so much of what you pay for. Now let me explain the principle, because this is where it becomes real and not magic. There are two completely different ways to warm a space, and almost everyone confuses them. The first way is to heat the air. This is what your furnace does. It blasts hot air into the room. And hot air is the worst possible thing to try to keep because it rises straight to the ceiling, it slips out every crack, and it carries the heat away the instant it touches a cold window or wall. You are pouring warmth into the leakiest container imaginable. That is why the furnace must run and run and run. The second way is radiant heat. This is the warmth you feel from the sun on your face on a cold but sunny day, or from a stone that has sat by the fire. Radiant heat does not warm the air. It travels in invisible rays, like light, and it warms the solid things it touches directly: your skin, your clothes, the furniture, the walls. And solid things hold heat far, far longer than air does. A warm stone stays warm for hours. A puff of warm air is gone in seconds. The clay pot over the candle is a radiant heater. The small flame heats the clay. The clay, being dense and solid, becomes a reservoir of warmth, and it radiates that warmth out steadily, gently, in all directions, long after, warming you and the things around you directly. Instead of trying to heat the air that just escapes, one small flame turned into steady, radiant warmth by the simple genius of clay. That is the whole trick. This is not folklore. This is settled physics, the same physics that governs every form of heating ever invented. Engineers know it well. The most comfortable, most efficient heating systems ever designed, the radiant floors and radiant panels sold today in expensive homes, work on exactly this principle: warming objects and people directly rather than blasting hot air. They have rediscovered it, and they sell it at a premium. And an old Amish clockmaker does the same thing with a candle and a clay pot for pennies. Let me give you the numbers, because they reveal the whole swindle. Think about where your furnace sends its heat. Hot air rises. So the moment your furnace blasts warm air into the room, it climbs straight to the ceiling, where no one is sitting, and pools up there against the roof, leaking out through the attic. Studies of home heating show that in a room with high heat and poor ceiling, a great deal of the warmth you pay for stacks up uselessly above your head and escapes while you sit shivering at floor level. Picture it. The warm air gathered at the ceiling, the cold air pooled at the floor, and you, paying for heat that is sitting 8 feet above you, doing you no good at all. Radiant heat does not do this. It travels in straight lines like sunlight and warms you directly at the level where you actually live, no matter where the air goes. And consider this. The sun is 93 million miles away, across the dead cold vacuum of space, where there is no air at all to carry heat. And yet you feel its warmth on your face the instant it touches your skin on a winter morning. Picture that. Warmth crossing all that frozen emptiness with no air to carry it, and still reaching you. That is radiant heat, and it is the most powerful and efficient warmth in the universe. It needs no air. It wastes nothing on the empty space between. It simply warms what it strikes. The old clay heater works on the same principle as the sun itself. Your furnace, for all its roaring and all its cost, never learned the trick that a star and an Amish clockmaker both know. Now I have to introduce the villain, because someone made very sure you would forget all of this. Through the 20th century, the central heating industry grew into a giant. Furnaces, fuel, ductwork, the whole system. And like every industry, it needed you dependent. So it sold a story, and the story was this. That warmth comes from a big machine in the basement, burning fuel you must buy, blasting hot air you must pay for, controlled by a company that bills you every month. They taught us to heat the air, the most wasteful method there is, because the more you waste, the more fuel you buy, and the more they profit. They taught us that the small, old, efficient ways, the radiant stove, the warm stone, the heated brick in the bed, were primitive and beneath us. They took the oldest, wisest knowledge of heat and they buried it under a roaring furnace and a bottomless bill. But the Amish never bought the story. They kept their stoves, their warm stones, their clay, their radiant warmth, and they let the roaring furnace pass them by. But that is only half the story, because knowing the principle is not the same as knowing how to use it safely and well. And I have to be very careful with you here, because we are talking about an open flame, and that demands respect. Now let me give you the concrete steps, because I promised you that you could understand this and try a small version yourself, but safety comes first, always, and I will not give you anything dangerous. First, the principle in its simplest form. A small candle flame and a clay vessel set above it with space for air to flow, so the clay heats and radiates. Picture the small, steady flame and the clay growing warm above it. The clay is the heart of it. It captures the heat of the flame and turns it into steady, radiant warmth. Second, and this is the most important rule of all, you never, ever leave an open flame unattended. Not for a moment. A candle is fire, and fire must always be watched, kept far from anything that can burn, set on a stable, non-flammable surface, away from children, away from curtains, away from anything that could tip or catch. Picture a clear, bare, stable surface, nothing flammable anywhere near, and a person always present. If you cannot watch it, you put it out. There are no exceptions to this. The old folks respected fire deeply because they lived with it every day, and so must you. Third, understand its true purpose. This is not going to replace your furnace on the coldest night. Anyone who tells you a single candle will heat a whole house in a blizzard is not being honest with you. What it will do is take the chill off a small, closed space, gently and cheaply, and provide a measure of warmth in an emergency when the power is out and the furnace is dead. Picture a small, closed room, the door shut, the warmth slowly building. Modest expectations, honestly met. That is the old way. Fourth, and here is where the real savings hide, you close off space. Picture every door in the house shut, the family gathered in one warm room. The old families did not heat the whole house. They heated one room, the room they lived in, and they closed the doors on the rest. A small source of radiant heat in a small closed space does far more than a roaring furnace trying to heat empty hallways and unused rooms. Shrink the space, and a small warmth becomes enough. And fifth, you warm objects, not air. Picture a stone or a brick set near the heat, soaking up warmth for hours, then carried to where you need it. This is the deeper secret, and I am going to come back to it at the very end, because the old folks did something with this principle that almost nobody remembers, and it changed everything about how they survived the winter. And here is a detail Samuel insisted on, the one that doubles the warmth of any heat source you have. Put something dense and solid near it. A heat source out in the open, he said, warms for as long as it burns and not a moment longer. But set a stone, a brick, a cast iron pan, a vessel of water beside it, and that dense mass drinks up the heat and holds it, and goes on radiating that warmth for hours after the flame is out. Picture a heavy iron pan sitting beside the stove, growing hot, then giving its heat back slowly into the evening long after the fire has died down. The mass is a bank. You put warmth in while you have it, and you draw warmth out when you need it. Every old stove had iron and stone around it for exactly this reason. They were not decoration. They were the battery of the house. And one more thing Samuel showed me, simple and clever. He hung a heavy curtain across the doorway of the room he lived in. Picture the thick wool curtain, drawn across the open doorway, sealing the warm room from the cold hall. "A door is good," he said, "but even a heavy hanging cloth across an opening traps the warmth in the small space where the family sits and keeps the cold of the rest of the house out." It cost him nothing but an old blanket and a rod, and it kept the warmth he had made exactly where his body was, trapped the warmth in a small space, and a small source of heat becomes enough. Now let me pause for just a moment, because if you have made it this far, you are not like most people. Most people hear one candle and they scoff and turn the thermostat up another degree because that is what they were taught to do, but you are still here. You are the kind of person who wants to understand how heat actually works, who is tired of paying to warm the outdoors, who wants to know that your family could stay warm even if the furnace failed on the coldest night. There is a quiet movement of people exactly like you, relearning the old wisdom of warmth. If that is you, subscribe and stand with them. Not for me. For the simple idea that a family should understand how to keep itself warm and never be wholly at the mercy of a furnace and a fuel company. Now let me give you the deepest secret of heat, because everything so far is only half the story. Here is the secret within the secret. After we had sat by the warm clay for over an hour, after the workshop had taken the chill off around us, Samuel told me the thing his grandfather had told him was more important than any stove or flame. He said, "Do not heat the room, and then go to bed and let it all escape. Heat the iron, and take the iron with you. The warmth you carry is the warmth you keep." And then he explained the thing almost nobody remembers. The old families understood that the cheapest, most reliable warmth was stored warmth, heat captured in a dense object and carried to where the body needed it. They would heat a stone or a brick or a sealed vessel of water by the stove or the fire during the day, when the heat was already there. Then at night they would wrap that hot stone in cloth and carry it to bed and tuck it at their feet, and it would radiate gentle warmth for hours, warming the bed and the body directly, all night, with no fire burning, no fuel spent, no danger. The warming pan, the bed brick, the footstone. Every old household had them. Picture the heavy stone wrapped in flannel, glowing with stored warmth, tucked into the cold bed. They did not heat the empty room all night. They heated the body directly, with stored warmth, exactly where it was needed. And then Samuel told me about his own test, the thing that made me sit up. Years ago, he said, in a hard winter, he tried to keep his bedroom warm all night with a small stove, feeding it, waking to tend it, and still waking cold because the heat escaped as fast as he made it. Then he remembered his grandfather's bed stones. He stopped heating the empty room at night entirely. Instead, he heated 2 stones by the day stove, wrapped them, and took them to bed. And he slept warm all night through the bitterest cold, with no fire burning in the room at all. The same house, the same winter. He simply stopped heating the wind and started carrying the warmth. Warm the iron, not the wind. He used a fraction of the fuel, and he slept warmer than he ever had. That is the part the modern world forgot. The furnace heats the air and lets it escape all night into empty rooms and bills you for every degree that flies away. The old way captured warmth in solid things and carried it to the body where it was needed and held it for hours, for almost nothing. One way warms the wind, the other warms the man, and only one of them sends you a bill. Now step back with me, because this was never really only about a candle. When you stand at that thermostat, turning it up against the cold, watching $1,000 a year roar out into the night, you are paying for something deeper than warmth. You are paying for the day they convinced us that heat comes only from a big machine and a bottomless fuel bill, that the old wisdom of radiant warmth and carried heat was beneath us, that we were helpless to keep ourselves warm without them. Something was taken from us. The simple, steadying knowledge of how heat truly works and how little of it we actually need when we stop pouring it out the window, They did not just sell us a furnace, they sold us forgetfulness. And the thing that gave me hope, driving home through that bitter gray cold, is that it is not lost. Samuel Byler still has it. His grandchildren, sleeping warm with stones at their feet, still have it. And you have it now. The moment you understand that you must warm the thing, not the air, and carry the warmth instead of chasing it. Warm the iron, not the wind. So let me ask you something, and I do read these. In the comments below, tell me one thing. What does it cost you to heat your home through the winter? And how much of that warmth do you think you are simply losing to the cold air and the empty rooms? Tell me your number. I think when we see them all together, we are going to understand just how much of that money was never really keeping us warm at all. And if something in this stirred you, if you felt that pull toward understanding warmth instead of just paying for it, then subscribe and join us. This is not a place for smashing buttons. It is a gathering of self-reliant people who would rather understand heat than be at the mercy of a furnace. You belong here, if you want to. In the next video, I am going to show you something that sounds impossible in the modern world. How the Amish keep their eggs fresh for up to 8 months with no refrigerator at all, using a simple method almost everyone has forgotten. If you think carrying warm stones to bed was clever, wait until you see how they keep a whole season's eggs without a drop of electricity. But before you go, stay with me one more minute, because after I first told this story, the letters poured in, and a few of them I have to read to you. The first came from a woman named Grace in Lititz, Pennsylvania, who lost power for 3 days in an ice storm last winter, with small children and no heat. She remembered this method. She closed the family into one small room, used a safe, watched heat source, and heated stones by it to warm the children through the nights. She wrote, "We were warm and safe for 3 days while the whole town shivered. My children thought it was an adventure. I knew it was something more. I knew we were not helpless. Not helpless, Grace. On the coldest, darkest night, that is everything." The second came from a man named Paul in Burlington, Vermont, a retired heating engineer of all people. He wrote that he had installed furnaces and ductwork for 40 years and that everything in this video was, in his words, physics I knew but never lived. He built a clay radiant heater for his workshop and began heating soapstone to warm his reading chair in the evenings instead of heating the whole house. He wrote, "I cut my evening heating to almost nothing, and I have never been more comfortable. We engineered ourselves into heating the air, the one thing you cannot keep. The old man is right. Warm the object. I wish I had listened 40 years ago. From a man who built the very systems we are talking about, that is worth holding on to." And there was a third letter that stayed with me. It came from an older couple, Walter and Joan, in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, living on a fixed income, watching the heating bill eat more of it every year. They wrote that they had started living the old way through the evenings, gathering in one room behind a heavy curtain, heating soapstones by their wood stove and keeping them close, and turning the central heat far down. Walter wrote, "Our heating bill dropped by nearly half this winter. Half. We are warmer in our chairs than we ever were before, because the warmth is right there against us instead of up at the ceiling. We are not cold, and we are not broke. We did not know you could have both. Nearly half on a fixed income. That is not a small thing. That is breathing room, found in the oldest knowledge there is. Now let me answer the doubts, because I know you have them. I had them too. You are thinking, this is dangerous, an open flame indoors. And you are right to take that seriously, and I want to be completely clear. Any open flame is a fire risk, and it demands constant attention, a safe, stable surface, distance from anything flammable, and a person always present to watch it. Never, ever leave a flame unattended, and never use any flame for heat in an unventilated space. If you are not willing to respect fire completely, do not use it at all. The deeper lesson of this video, the carried warmth, the heated stone, needs no flame near your bed at all, and that is the safest gift of the old ways. This is history and principle I am sharing, not a license to be careless. Safety first, always. You are thinking, one candle cannot possibly heat my house. And you are correct, and I told you so plainly. No single candle will heat a house in a blizzard, and anyone promising that is lying to you. What the old principles do is take the chill off a small, closed space, provide real warmth in an emergency, and above all teach you to stop wasting the heat you already pay for. The savings are not in the candle. The savings are in closing the doors, shrinking the space, warming objects instead of air, and carrying stored heat to the body. That is where the real money hides. You are thinking, why would anyone hide such useful knowledge? But now you understand. You cannot meter a heated stone. You cannot bill a family every month for closing a door and warming a brick. The furnace and the fuel line make money with every wasteful degree. The old ways make no one anything except the family they keep warm. That is the only reason they were buried. Not because they failed, because efficient warmth cannot be sold by the gallon. And you are thinking, this is just old-fashioned hardship dressed up as wisdom. But ask anyone who has lived through a long power outage in deep winter whether knowing how to keep warm without the furnace is hardship or salvation. The old ways are not hardship, they are independence. They are the knowledge that the coldest night cannot defeat you, with or without the machine in the basement, and that knowledge, once you have it, you carry for life. So this winter, before the bitter nights come, learn to warm the thing and not the air. Close the doors, shrink the space. Hang a heavy curtain across the opening. Set a stone or an iron by your heat to hold its warmth. Heat a stone by the stove and carry it to your bed, wrapped in flannel, glowing with stored warmth against the cold. And discover how warm a person can be while spending almost nothing, the way your great-grandparents knew all along. The furnace will still be there for the worst of the cold, but you will never again be wholly at its mercy, and you will never again pay to heat the empty air above your head. And remember what Samuel Byler told me 3 times beside the warm clay in his cold December workshop. The English heat the air, and the air runs away. We heat the thing, and the thing stays warm. Warm the iron, not the wind. Warm the iron.